2019 regular council meeting to order. First item on the agenda is adopt the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Any changes on the agenda from members of council? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks?
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. It's not working. Fine, we'll do it the hard way. Discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Hey, John, it's Sam here.
I was about to find out if you're on the line. So how do you vote?
In favor.
Are you in favor, Councillor?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. Carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, item 3, we have 6 items on the consent agenda tonight. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Special Committee of the Whole minutes from January 7th, 2019. Regular council meeting minutes from January 8th, 2019. Committee of the Whole minutes from January 15, 2019. Councillors Barnhart, Stout, and Danilak's reports, items 10A, 10B, and 10C. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got an amendment for the minutes for January the 8th. So could we exempt that from the...
Sure, we'll take 5B off.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Councillor Munkoff-Swain?
In favor.
Thank you. Which brings us to the open forum. We have nobody currently registered, is that correct? And back to item 5B, regular council meeting minutes, January 8, 2019 minutes. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to, I'm sure it's a typo, draw your attention to section 19/01/05, the bylaw 93419 Downstream Meadows Phase 10 was moved by Councillor Stout Daniluk. I don't remember getting married to Councillor Daniluk, so I suspect that's a typo.
I would hope so.
Could we amend? I can't actually remember which one of us did that now.
Can we amend that?
Which one?
It is. Can you prepared to move the minutes as amended?
I am. Yes, I will move the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Councillor Munkoff-Swain?
In favor.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to item 6, no public hearings. Registered presentation, item 7A, Beaumont Night Market. Ms. Shelby.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, Council, Administration, and the Beaumont community. My name is Sylvia Chevry, and I'm the owner of Chartier Restaurant, and I'm also a member of the Empowering Women and Entrepreneurs. I've been participating in all of Beaumont's night market since their inception, and I'm here to report on the event that occurred on October 20th, 2018 at the CCBCC on behalf of the Beaumont Night Market. So last year was the 3rd annual Beaumont Night Market, and it exceeded the original expectations. In 2016, the night market brought in 1,600 guests. In 2017, the night market brought in 4,000 guests. And we're pleased to announce that this past year, we hosted over 5,000 guests at the event. The event ran from 3 p.m. till 11 p.m., starting the event an hour earlier to accommodate families. There was a lineup starting as early as 2:15 p.m. We had over 85 vendors, buskers, live stage entertainment, Firefly Productions, and this year we showcased for the first time the youth vendors. We had two 16-year-old vendors and an 11-year-old vendor that showcased their products. It was really great to see our youth participate in the event, and they all had positive experience and stated that it was an opportunity of a lifetime. The youth vendors were mentored by EWE from marketing, branding, and production of their product to what they may expect at such an event. Each youth vendor had fun and stated that they would do it all over again, and they learned a lot by participating. Another new element this year was the famous 120-foot by 30-foot tent, and EWE would like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Beaumont for partnering up with us and providing the funds for this extra space. Our volunteers canvassed the crowd, and there was only uplifting and raving reviews with the extra space, which was contrasted with the year before, where we definitely had the strong feedback that it was too crowded. Our guests felt that they had more room than other years, and they stayed longer because it was not so crowded. The vendors also stated that the River City tent elevated their experience with more sales, and the extra room was greatly appreciated. Sales for the vendors varied from $600 during the event all the way up to $3,400. We don't have a grand total yet because we have a few vendors that have still not reported back on their sales. However, to have a home-based business have the capability to see so much in one evening is a positive reflection that we need to support our businesses and provide a platform like this for our business community. We also had an area for the food trucks. Even though the wind picked up a little bit in the evening, we were lucky that there was no snow on the ground. Sales were still very strong for the food trucks. Our volunteers also canvassed the guests from where they were visiting. We had individuals from Leduc, Edmonton, St. Albert, BC, even as far as from the East Coast. They were visiting their family near Beaumont, and they decided to join in the festivities. On social media, Beaumont and the event was showcased on radio, TV. A mini commercial was created by local videographer Spencer Short, his business Short Films, and he also videoed a time-lapse shoot of the tent going up. All this footage was used to showcase Beaumont as well as the event and the vendors that participated. With all the social media platforms, there was over 60,000 impressions from the marketing strategies implemented for this event. All in all, the event was considered a huge success, and we're hopeful to bring another successful Beaumont Night Market on Saturday, October 5th at the Community Centre.
Thank you very much for doing this tonight.
No problem.
I had the privilege of attending that event. It's with a lot of members of council. It was a great event. And it's nice to hear how successful it was and how well it was received out in the public. Not just in our city, but in the surrounding region as well. Looking forward to the next one.
That's great. Yeah, we couldn't have done it without Beaumont's support. It was definitely very, very, very well attended, and the tent was instrumental in making the whole thing smooth and seamless.
Great. Questions or comments from members of council? Councilor.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'd certainly echo your statement. It's a terrific event I attended. It was thoroughly enjoyed by everybody I spoke to. I spent some time doing duty on the door as well with Councillor Danlock. I had one concern that I wanted to raise, and it's a minor concern, but I still wanted to bring it up with regarding the tent, which was great and added added an enormous amount to the event. My concern was that I spent some time with a lady visitor who became agitated because she could not find her way to the shuttle bus pickup point, which I eventually, after some time, discovered was in the overflow car park in the rear of the building, and I couldn't see a way to access it because I couldn't see past the marquee tent that was apparently obstructing the car park, but in fact I subsequently discovered there was enough room to walk along the side of it. So my suggestion would be, could we put some clear signage up if we do that again to make it absolutely clear that there is, because from the front door it looks like the whole car park is obstructed, and you wouldn't then walk that way thinking that you'd find an exit.
That's a great suggestion. Absolutely, I can take that back to the group, but I think that's great. That's exactly the kind of feedback that we need to make sure that every year we're getting better and ironing out more of the kinks. So if we're at the stage where signage is the problem, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
Yes, that's an endorsement of the event.
Yeah, yes. No, absolutely. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Danlock?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. As Councillor Stalton mentioned, I did attend as well as the Minister and the rest of Council in that evening, and I went around to meet all the vendors in the tent area especially. I made a point of trying to meet all of them, and they all said that the tent gave them more chance to talk to people and engage them. And once they're engaged, they tend to buy their products as opposed to being so crowded that they just kind of look and they want to ask a question, they wait a minute or two, people are impatient, those things, they say, well, I can't talk to Steve, so I'll just wander, I'll get back to him later, and they never do.
Yeah.
So I think that our support of the event with the tent was critical to its success, and hopefully we can do the same thing in the coming years. So thank you very much.
Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just looking forward to the October 5th, 2019. Would we expect the same format this year, or has the group chatted about that?
Still in the preliminary stages, but I think that we've got a pretty good template down at this point, so I can't anticipate too many major changes to the format of the program, other than maybe adjusting the times a little bit. The feedback was perhaps that starting a bit earlier would be better suited for families, and then ending an hour earlier, so maybe doing 2 till 10 instead of 3 till 11, but the overall format likely wouldn't change much.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you. Yeah, one of the things I noticed when I was there is that just the diversity in the folks that attended, from families with strollers, which the year before were really challenged with the space, right through to the elderly. And we've seen lots of people, and I ran into friends of mine from Edmonton that actually came out, and I didn't even know they were coming. So I think that speaks to the reach of the marketing that you did. And I think just a comment, or my last comment, will be on the marketing for that. I think you guys did a phenomenal job with the marketing and getting stuff out there. And you mentioned 60,000 impressions from the promotions, and I think we could tell. And I think that big pat on the back is deserved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Great, thank
Appreciate it. Brings us to item 7B, RCMP quarterly review. Sergeant Egan.
Welcome. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, administrators. Once again, I am Jeff Egan, Detachment Commander of Beaumont RCMP, and I'm here to present the RCMP's quarterly report, and it's based on the RCMP's third quarter of October 1st to December 31st of 2018. The purpose of this report is to engage our partners on current trends and crime issues and other items of interest in the realm of policing in our city of Beaumont. I've broken down this report into 3 areas: crime statistics in an overview, some detachment commentary, and updates on our annual policing priorities. When we go through the statistics at a glance, I'd just like to remind our councillors that when we talk about our 5-year trend, our population has gone up approximately 3,000 people in the city of Beaumont since 2014. So some increases could be anticipated with the rise in population. First of all, overall persons crimes, 5-year trend saw an increase in the number of person crimes of 43%, while the change of 2017 was 42%. So that number is going up. With the statistics being drawn from Stats Canada, now that the year is done, the calendar year, we'll be able to look at this in some detail and look for trends, patterns, and other issues moving forward to address this number. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about our Community Advisory Committee. Our property crimes, the 5-year trend, saw a decrease of 4% and a decrease of 7% from last year. It's one of our annual policing priority issues, and we've taken certain steps to actually tackle this number and try and drive it down. So again, I'll have some commentary on this later in my presentation. Overall, the total number of criminal code files has gone down 22% over the 5-year trend. Statistically, there is no change from last year. The total number of criminal code saw a 1% decrease in the 5-year trend and a 5% increase from 2017. I think the best measure of statistics is our overall crime severity index. This number that I'm referring to is the same one I reported last quarter. It's a yearly number that comes out, and our crime severity index of 47.7 or 43.3 was revised and went down from initially 47.7. Is one of the lowest in the province. So I interpret that as being Beaumont as being one of the safest communities in the province. Part and parcel of that is because our citizens care, and when they determine they see something that's out of the ordinary, some suspicious activity or vehicles or property, they tend to call us. And this is the best way to bring it to our attention is through reporting it directly to our office or through Crime Stoppers. One of the activities which I'm proud that is continuing to drop is the number of false alarms. By having this number going down and reduced through cooperation and best practices, it frees up our officers and support staff to do other policing duties. Again, I pulled this information from the city's website, and of note, a more up-to-date 2018 population would show that 5-year increase of almost 3,000 persons on the nose. So our population is continuing to rise in Beaumont. These statistics represent the 5-year trend, and they're comparing statistics from January to December of the calendar year, of each 2014 through 2018. And we can go through it, or we can just summarize, and we'll see some trends that I highlighted. So again, the person's crimes are up. We will look at this moving forward, and we'll see if there's anything we can do to address this number. From what I've seen so far, these are not crimes where it would appear that our citizens are being targeted by unknown assailants. The majority of our person's crimes, our victims are aware of who the assailant is when they report to the police. So again, that'll be something we'll examine through our best practices and our perhaps our policing priorities for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Our total property crimes are seeing reverse. We went down 30 total property crimes from last year to this year. And I think this number would be even lower, but for an unexpected upturn in number of frauds. The initiatives we have installed to reduce property crimes were to target thefts, like physical thefts of vehicles from vehicles versus frauds. Now I can attribute of the 81 reported frauds, approximately a dozen to a similar incident, which is currently under investigation. So in reality, a dozen of those fraud files are all related. Total other criminal code, as I mentioned, statistically, there's no remarkable change from last year to this year. And just some of the other policing activities are covered in the second pages of the report. Go to the crime severity index. This hasn't changed since my last report I kept in there. I think this is the best measurement of our community, and the number again is one of the lowest in the province. Go to my commentary. Move is a constant in the RCMP. We saw the arrival of Constable Paul Beaulieu. Constable Beaulieu and his family moved from the Sano detachment and are now citizens of Beaumont. And Beaulieu is also a bilingual member, so this is our second fully bilingual member in our community. And with the RCMP, there will be vacancies throughout the years. My objective is to make sure that when we run these vacancies, that the city's not being billed for any of these services that they're not receiving. And secondly, or even more importantly, I have to make sure that any vacancies don't have an impact on our community. So public safety is always a primary issue. Just highlighted some of our community engagement. Our members are quite busy outside of responding from calls. Some of them are priority issues that I'll touch upon. And moving forward into the next quarter of the RCMP year, January to March, our community advisory committee, which serves or consists of representatives throughout our community, our representatives of Beaumont, they bring issues to the police and we deliver messages back out to their groups. We will be discussing possible priorities moving forward into next year, and we'll also be looking at community engagement to receive input from our citizens. So just updates on our our policing priorities, again, they were crime reduction strategies, which the objective was to target property crimes and offender management, our impaired driving through drugs and alcohol, our positive youth engagement, and employee wellness. There is a list of some of the mechanisms we have installed in our detachment to reduce the property crimes in our community. I believe there has been some effect. We definitely want to see that number lower than what it is. But these are some of the issues that we have, or the initiatives that we've taken to reduce that number. So we'll continue with these moving forward for last quarter, and we'll reassess again at the end of the year. But so far we know that there has been a decrease in our total numbers. Our second initiative was impaired driving. So in last quarter, there's 7 additional charges laid in relation to impaired driving by drugs or alcohol. And I have been previously asked how did that compare out to previous years. So year to date this year in our policing priorities, we've had 22 impaired charges laid with an additional 27 roadside suspensions. So if I take the same time frames of previous years, I'll see in 2017, we had 19 charges laid, 2016, 18, 2015, 24 charges, and in 2014, only 9. So rather consistent. I'd be more pleased to see that number go down. I think it would be an indication that the message is being delivered that it's not okay for anyone to drink and drive. So one of the things we did do is we had several check stops throughout the year with one dedicated significant check stop during National Safe Driving Week. So during a full shift, we checked over 1,700 vehicles for compliance with federal laws and provincial laws. That resulted in 2 separate impaired driving charges that night, 2 72-hour suspensions, and 24 roadside screening tests where the blood concentration was under 50 milligrams %. So the people that responsibly had a drink but were tested and determined that they could drive at that time. One thing that may change these numbers is in December 18th, 2018, Bill C-46, the provisions came into effect. One of those major provisions was the power to allow police to conduct mandatory alcohol screening. So previously, police needed a suspicion to make a demand for alcohol. Now, police may, upon any lawful stop of a vehicle, as long as they have the equipment in their possession, may demand samples of breath from the driver to determine if they have been drinking. So that's a significant change in the laws of Canada. Our positive youth development, we had a recount, and through that recount, we determined we actually handed out all of our positive ticketing to our youth. So it's a very well-received program in our community, and we're actually going back to our positive ticketing committee and asking for more tickets. So I think we underreported the first 2 quarters, but it was just a miscount. So over 1,100 tickets have been handed out by RCMP and our municipal enforcement partners to our youth. And again, we work hand in hand with our youth center, try and engage our youth every night. There's special activities that are coordinated. There's police and youth nights that we also attend. And finally, employee wellness. Again, it's an RCMP internal priority. It's just to make sure that we take care of the well-being of our own employees and recognize those who contribute up and beyond what's expected. So that is my report. If there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. It's nice to see things on the trend down, especially the crime severity index, and being one of the safest communities in Beaumont, and that's a testament to the service your department provides to our town and for our city, and we really do appreciate it. One quick question before I open it up, and you may not be prepared for it. We legalized cannabis back in October. Just wondering if we're encountering any issues or if it's just been pretty much business as normal.
I would say business as normal. There hasn't been anything specific in this community that I'm aware of. I know through national media, I know upon legalization, other parts of Canada had encountered some, but not in our community.
No, that's good to hear. Questions from members of council? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you for your presentation. In the person crime section up top, you had alluded to some increases in there, and I was just wondering if you'd be able to speak to any of those persons crimes being contributed to issues people have had with online wrongdoings, and if you've seen increases or decreases in that reported.
Online personal crimes?
Yeah, online bullying, harassments, threats, those kinds of things. Has that made it through into your detachment, and would that have made it into the statistics for that person's crime section that you demonstrated?
I'd have to double check because these categories represent several offenses that the data is collected from. So this is a summary. I can't specifically speak to that right now. I am aware that there have been some issues of harassment, whether it's criminal harassment, harassing text messages, and I am aware of some bullying issues, but I can't speak specifically to any numbers of this right at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Two quick questions, if you don't mind. How do you define a false alarm? In your I know the false alarm is going down, which is good, but how do you define a false alarm from your perspective?
Well, there's the town bylaw that we follow what defines the false alarm, and basically once that request is made for service, whether it's through our dispatch, through our front counter, or an officer attends and determines the alarm to be false, we consider it false at that point. So it's once the call for service is made.
Okay.
And every time we receive a false alarm, the first instance is always a warning, and we provide best practices to the homeowner, property representative, on ways of avoiding future false alarms. So we proactively try and reduce that number and tell each owner what they can do.
Good, thank you. Second question was, I noticed in your report, you mentioned in that one shift of 700 drivers being stopped, 2 72-hour suspensions were given. How do you get a suspension for 72 hours? What is the level you get that for?
Well, those are probably, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios for driving suspension. So a graduated driver can have no alcohol in their system.
Right.
We have our suspension for being over the limit of between 50 and 80 milligrams percent.
Right.
And that would result in a suspension as such.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Worship, just a question on infrastructure, the building, the facility. Are you outgrowing it? Is there a need and time for additional space growth?
Well, I think what we will be doing moving forward is looking at that. As I sit here today, space is fine, but I mean, we're a growing community. I've been made aware, and we've put forward the paperwork for the additional general duty policing officer that was approved in December. So as we increase our capacity and our number of officers, we have to look at our space and determine if that will be enough moving forward.
Right.
Today, we're fine, but again, we'll have to kind of look at, a future growth of the city and what we expect our policing services to require with that growth.
Okay. Second question on how's your volunteer base?
It's good.
Still good?
It's good. Just again, today I was told that there's another person that would like to volunteer.
Yep.
So it's usually by word of mouth, but we have volunteers, and there continue to be more.
Okay, just one other question. Access on the weekends, there's been some talk about how that could be facilitated.
We're a 24-hour service that's available.
Yeah.
Our support staff is not always, it doesn't work on weekends currently. We do have extended hours during the week to accommodate people that work traditional Monday to Friday hours. So we do offer that to our community.
Right. One more then. On the check stop, and I believe it was northbound on 50th Street, when you set up that significant check stop, did you find it was Beaumontonians, or is it just people driving through?
Well, we moved it around various locations, and
Okay.
we actually had different check stops set up at different times. So
Okay.
with that large a flow, there is a lot of the traffic going through Beaumont on the highways.
Right.
But we did also check within our city as well. There's a town back in 2018.
Right.
So I can't really specify of the 1700 where exactly everyone came from, but
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Done?
Those are my questions.
Okay, cool. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. My question is back to the total persons crime statistics, and pretty significant jump. And I believe you also mentioned that a lot of these crimes are not unrelated people. They're people who know, whether it's spouses or partners or friends, former friends. I just wonder if there's any other information here in terms of trends. Is it are we doing enough around domestic violence? Are we perhaps raising the awareness to the point that more are being identified in charge? Any information there? Because it is alarming to see that one going up as much as it is.
Thank you for your question. We'll have to look in more detail exactly at that number. There could be corrections in the next month or so. It shouldn't be significant. There are trends that could cause changes to, say, reported sexual assaults, the Me Too movement. Yes, the assaults would include domestic violence. In October, with our family and community support services, and there was counselors there as well, it was the Family Violence Awareness Month. So we try and educate the public, and when we do have victims of violence, we refer them to victim services. So that would be included that number, but I can't break it down today to determine what percentage family violence, what might be youth, but it's something we will look at, and it would be also up for discussion at our Community Advisory Committee as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Danlock. Sorry, Councillor Stout. I read Danlock and said Stout.
There's that mix-up again. Thank you, Worship. Through you to Staff Sergeant Egan. Two questions, and the first one's awkward because I'm going to have to talk through the statistics just to make sure that I understand this correctly. This is a report for the third quarter of the reporting year, so it's 3/4 of a year. The 2018 statistics, and the last quarter will complete the year. So all the comparisons with previous years are for the third quarter, for the first 3 quarters of those previous reporting years. Is that correct?
I'll try and explain it again because I was confused when I first started doing the report. So the stats that are referred to in this chart come from Statistics Canada. They're from January to December, the calendar year.
Yes.
And of course, here at CMP, we run our fiscal year from April 1st to March 31st. So our fiscal year does not line up with the calendar year. So the statistics that I'm referring to come from January, December. So when we set our initiatives and measure statistics, this is the end. This is where we're looking at. So our initiatives to tackle some of these, we really don't get into until April that we actually try and address some of these issues. So they don't match up perfectly.
Yes, and thank you. I was particularly interested in the crime severity index statistic because what we're actually quoted here for both Alberta and for Beaumont is a 2017 crime severity value. I assume because the 2018 reporting year is not completed. But what that means then is that any upswing or downswing or change in the statistics for 2018 won't actually be represented in the crime severity index figure for Beaumont here because that's a 2017 number. So my question was really, would it be possible to calculate a crime severity index value for 2018, even though we know the year is not complete, just to give us an idea of where we're tracking and whether we're above or below?
I don't believe it's possible, and what has been explained to me, the crime severity index number comes from, I received it from one of our RCMP analysts. I'm told that's done in July, and it's coming from Stats Canada. So yes, we are behind. I can inquire if there's any way, but I've been told they come out in July. So again, they are a little bit behind. In a community our size, a few extra crimes should not impact our crime severity index because that's one of the factors takes in consideration is population, severity of crime. So the number's been consistent over the last 2 years since I've been here.
Yes. Oh, and I'm not expecting a big change. It's simply that the current statistics aren't represented in the CSI value, and it seems to me that it is possible to calculate it, although, of course, it may be, if it's not being done locally, it may be
It's not,
placing an extra
definitely not
burden
done
on
under
another.
detachment, so I can inquire further. My understanding is that coming from Stats Canada,
Yes.
so that's when they're calculated, is in July.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate the explanation. Second question was regarding the changes to the what was the exact wording? Regarding the changes to the circumstances under which you may require a breathalyzer test. So now we can demand a breath test from anybody operating a motor vehicle?
Anyone who's driving a vehicle, who's lawfully stopped, and if the officer has the equipment at the time.
So do you anticipate that will lead to an increase in the number of breath tests compared to before?
It should, because it should be every driver of the road that is subjected to the mandatory alcohol screening.
Right. Okay, so we'd expect to see those numbers go up, and we'd expect, therefore, to see an improved detection rate of drunk driving?
I can't speak to what we'll see as a result of those tests. If we're talking strictly the numbers, yes, the numbers should go up because every driver should be subjected to a test. But will we, statistically, will more people be charged with drinking and driving? The numbers will tell us the results as we move forward. So,
but that's not that's something you would anticipate would be the case.
The mandatory alcohol screening is designed to give us the tools to make our roads safer. So that would seem to be the thought, that with mandatory alcohol screening, we should be catching more drivers or more individuals that are drinking and driving.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Danlick, last questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, more of just a closing comment. Had the privilege 10 days ago doing a RCMP ride-along with local constable Mark Maskley. Friday night, thought maybe a little bit exciting, and it was very boring 6 hours. It was quite
don't take it a certain
entertaining.
way, but
It's
that's
not a bad
good.
thing, though, but you're kind of hoping to have a little excitement. There was nothing going on, so traffic was slow. We did a few traffic stops. The constable was very professional. He's a great example of the local RCMP detachment, so I just want to thank Constable Egan, Staff Sergeant Egan, for his leadership in the detachment. I learned a lot about policing from local perspective, so it was a great experience. Not for an exciting experience, but it was a good experience, which is probably a good thing in the bigger picture, but nonetheless, it was a great job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know about the sergeant, but I'd prefer our police were bored. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, brings us to business items. Item 8A, shared investment for shared benefit task force appointment. Ms. Tika Braun, please.
Council is being asked to identify a representative and an alternate for the Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force. The Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force, or CISB, will be a key pillar of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's mandate over the next 2 years. Initiated by the board's strategic plan, the main objective of this work is to increase the region's competitiveness and collaboration by enabling sustainable and equitable investment and share the revenue opportunities and benefits accordingly. The project will ultimately develop a funding and benefit sharing formula and a set of rules to apply to selected regional infrastructure and initiatives. The CISB task force will provide strategic direction and oversight for the project. All regional board member municipalities will have a representative on the task force and identify an alternate. The task force term will be approximately 2 years, ending with a recommendation to the board by March of 2021. Meeting frequency and schedule will be set during the first meeting, but is expected to align with milestones and delivery dates of the project. This is a great opportunity to represent the City of Beaumont and collaborate with our regional partners on this important initiative. Administration recommends that council appoint Mayor Stewart as the City of Beaumont's representative on the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force, and that council take this opportunity to identify an alternate from council. That's all I had today, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And just for council's sake, a couple of background items from that meeting, just to provide more context. When the EMRB was setting up this task force, it was actually quite hotly contested as to whether or not we're going to go with a standard 2 cities, 2 towns, two rural municipalities plus the city of Edmonton, or if everybody would go onto the board. And so it actually took a fair bit to get to this point where every municipality on the EMRB is sitting on this task force. And so one of the caveats is that if we're going to go that way, then the mayors would be the representatives. So that was, we sort of agreed to that one at the EMRB. So if you're wondering why my name is there, that's why my name is there. And so I guess tonight I'm looking for ratification of that agreement that I already made, and an alternate to back me up. Is there any questions or concerns as we move forward? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. And my question's for you. I assume then the alternate would serve on the board only if you were unavailable. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and this may be a difficult question for you to answer, but how often do you think that will be?
Well, talk to Councillor Barnhart, who backs me up most times. So far, it's been once or twice. I anticipate you'll probably have to go once or twice over the course of the 2 years. Plus, of course, the alternates, you're also welcome to come to every meeting and be part of it, but
wouldn't have voting rights.
But we only get one vote as a community, yeah.
So we'd be in that situation, the alternate would simply be an observer. But nevertheless, there's a lot to be done. Yes, I'd be happy, I'd be honoured to put my name forward.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Any further comments from other members of council? All right, do we have somebody, seeing no further discussion, do we have somebody prepared to move the first recommendation? That council appoint myself as the City of Beaumont's representative to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region's Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force. Councillor Van Newkirk.
So moved.
Discussion on the motion? Hang on. There we go. Seeing none, all in favor? Councillor Muncaw-Swain?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. And do we have a member of council prepared to move that council appoint Councillor Stout as the City of Beaumont's alternate representative on the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force? Councillor Barnhart.
What you said, so moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. Yeah, I had the benefit of reading it. Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Councillor Muncaw-Swain?
In favor.
That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Which brings us to item 8B, School Resource Officer Options. Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. During the 2019 budget deliberations and approval, council resolved to approve a school resource officer position in 2019 and asked for position options to be presented back to council early in 2019. And those position options included RCMP school resource officer, a peace officer school resource officer, and a youth worker school resource officer. A little bit of background is that the concept of school resource officers began in the 80s, and it was basically set up in schools to deal with the drug awareness program. In more present time, or recently, it has evolved to include the basic mandate to foster partnerships among law enforcement, the schools, and the community. It helps to ensure a safe school environment, successful students, and productive citizens. Each program serves a different role in that community based on its requirements. So there's not one kind of solution that fits every situation. It's based on the needs of the community. So the benefits of a school resource officer can include developing positive attitudes and relationships between youth and law enforcement, engaging and working cooperatively in partnership with school officials, staff, students, parents, and the community, working in conjunction with other levels of government, reducing crime on school property and in the community, now and in the future, and helping to create safe school environments. Administration is recommending that the SRO position be housed out of the modernized Ecole J. Lapointe School to serve those students that are forming their initial interactions with law enforcement and starting to make lifestyle choices that may or may not benefit them as they grow. The position would also complement the community policing officer that the RCMP presently employs and is not meant to be a replacement. In discussions with the school board, they felt that the resource and skills of the RCMP school resource officer was a presence that would most benefit the students at the junior and senior high school level. I'm not going to go into the details within the report on the positives and negatives of each position. Those will probably take place during the debate. But given the long-term establishment and history of the police being school resource officers, the access to training and supports, skills, and conversations with the school board, administration is recommending that council approve an RCMP school resource officer position. However, if vacancies in the RCMP recruitment process affect the long-term success of the position, then administration would recommend moving forward with an alternative approach to the position, either the peace officer or youth worker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just on the logistics side, if council did, just a quick question, if council did endorse the RCMP officer, how fast would that resource become available to our school system?
We'd be probably looking initially up to a year, because we'd have to go through Ottawa, and they have to go through the recruitment process, and the RCMP have kind of a separate, their own recruitment process. So that would probably take up to, as I indicated earlier, the initial.
Okay, because normally we request an officer in March, and then we approve it in December, and then depending on all the factors, shows up in the fall of the year following.
Yeah.
Are we on that sort of a timeline? So like, are we 2 years out, or because we've already approved this budgetarily, could we short circuit that time frame a little bit?
Well, we have a couple different options. We have submitted, we do have another RCMP officer approved, and that is already in the works with the RCMP. We could ask that position be looked at in terms of the school resource officer, and then this one become the general duty officer. It's kind of a, Peter and Paul situation. But in terms of trying to speed that process up, the RCMP is attempting to get better with their recruitment. However, I can't make any guarantees on the speed of that. And when we were looking at the positions and stuff like that through the recommendation, really trying to balance that out, because that is the biggest concern that administration has as well, is in terms of the RCMP recruitment process. But looking at the other pros and cons, there was very strong weighted towards that ability to be able to come in and access those resources and access that position. So when we were kind of looking at it at this first kind of go, the RCMP position looked like the better option. It also depends on what council wants. If they wanted to go with a different type of youth position, I know that they would really like to get into mental health and do stuff in the evenings with the youth and stuff like that. It would be kind of taking it more out of the schools and put it more in the youth center. And the peace officer is also a very good option. It's just that it's so new in terms of having a lot of communities to draw upon, and also the training that would be required. We're probably a good year out before we would have someone who'd be able to step into that role.
Fair enough. Are there further questions from members of council? Mr. Hills. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Worship. Are you asking for a question, or can you offer any opinions on the options in front of us? What do we procedural? What do we need to do?
I'm not quite prepared to make a motion because I'm trying to see where council's sort of heads at. I know back in budget we discussed getting a resource faster than waiting for the process to go through to get an RCMP officer. So if you're ready to make a motion, we go ahead. We can discuss the motion, or we can just sort of see where council's heads at and go from there.
Okay. So I'll make a motion, Your Worship, then I'll speak to it if I can afterwards.
Sure.
At your convenience. The motion I'd like to make is that we go with the suggested option 2, that council not approve, and directs administration to move forward with a peace officer position.
Okay, speak to it.
Thank you. If I may, I'm not in favor of the RCMP option. I want to be very specifically why. As we grow our detachment, I would prefer RCMP to be strictly focused on criminal activity and do the good work they already do in our community and have them focus on that aspect of their work. There's also a cost factor. The peace officer is less expensive than an RCMP officer. I mean that respectfully. And I think a peace officer being uniformed and having the responsibilities of a peace officer and a school resource officer would be a good combination and would be very good for our community. That's my reasoning for not favoring the RCMP. Despite the good work they do, I want them criminally focused on their work that they do now. I think that would be the next best use for a full-blown RCMP officer in our community, or more as we need them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Munkoff-Swain.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Mr. Hill for the presentation. I looked at this quite a few times, actually, on all the options, and thank you, Councillor Danlock, for putting the motion forward. I guess I was reading through it, I was more leaning towards option 1, and really...
You gotta speak into the mic, we're losing you.
Training and access to the resources that RCMP have. I'm a big believer in, timing is obviously great, we'd rather all have it sooner rather than later, but I want to make sure that we get this right. So I wonder if there are any comments of Councillor Danlock, if you have any thoughts around, the lack of options for training, but also the comments about not being able to fully deal with criminal matters when encountered.
Okay, I hate to do it to you, but you need to do that again because we lost half of that.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
Sorry. So my first inclination was that I supported option 1 based on access training and that system that RCMP does provide. I do take Councillor Danlock's point about the RCMP work with legal matters, but I wonder if Councillor Danlock or others had to give a thought about how we access the training as well as the subject matter expert regarding the legal system, which is identified there.
Thank you very much. So you're in support of Councillor Danlock's motion?
I'd just be interested in more discussion around, are we okay that this person doesn't have the necessary subject matter around the legal system, they can't fully deal with criminal matters, etc.
Fair enough. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. My comments are around, I guess, the ability to staff the position more than anything. My first inclination is that option 1 would be the way to go for, I believe, similar comments to what we heard from Councillor Munkoff-Swain. I think the training portion and the support portion of this role is going to be a big part of the role, and that's where my first inclination is. We just had our quarterly update from the RCMP, and we're currently challenged to staff the positions that we're looking for in Beaumont adequately. And I worry that we put, should we put option 1 forward, that it would remain unstaffed long past, what might be the anticipated timeline of looking for the right candidate for the year and those types of things. Now, I do 100% respect that the success of this position is actually going to be in the candidate and the candidate selected, no matter which option we choose. Yes, option 1 is a higher dollar amount than option 2. Option 2 allows, I believe it was put in here as, administration controlled, or accountability to the community served. So would be reporting into administration and be able to provide timely updates and such. So that is all to say that option 1 would be my preference. However, I'm not convinced that the timeline or the candidate would be sourced and filled in the position given the current state of the other officers we've requested. Therefore, I'd be inclined tonight if we were, if we were making a decision, which is what we're here to do, to support option 2 for those reasons.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I have to say I have more questions than I have comments at this point in time, and it's trying to understand what exactly, which problem are we trying to solve and how, because I see them as very different options. If it's about criminal behavior or monitoring it and reporting it and stopping it, that's one thing. If it's about preventing it and working with teens and youth to help them deal with technology, which I read in the report. There's so much in this report that leads me, what Councillor Van Newkirk said, that it depends who gets hired as to what is going to be their skill set when it comes to working with teens in a school setting. And again, which school we're picking, why, what statistics are we basing the need for this on? So I'm really not thinking it's necessary to have an RCMP, but at this point, I don't know if it's a 2 or a 3. Quite honestly, I don't know which problem this is trying to solve. And maybe that's my question to Mr. Hiltz. Is there are there statistics or concerns that we're trying to address here, and one of these will better do that? Can you give me some idea on that?
Thank you, Your Worship, to members of council. I think, it is exactly that question is who you hire is going to make a really significant impact. It's going to be who can relate best to those students that will be serving. So whoever you put in that position needs to want to be in that position. It needs to have a good relationship with those youth. It would not serve you well to have a very stern, I'm trying to think, enforcement-minded individual in there. You're probably looking at someone who would really look at, a lot of the dynamics that those kids deal with. It could be, if we looked at the youth worker, they're looking for, working with kids in the evening, more community-wide on mental health issues and helping them, kind of solve those problems. The school's looking at that resource officer who can be able to assist when those issues arise. They have, for example, there's the calls for service when a kid brings a weapon to school, or when dealing with things like that, dealing with some of those domestic abuse and violence type of situations. It comes down to exactly that from when my discussions with the school board, they were open to all 3 options, but their preference is the RCMP. Coming from, they just feel that blends better to what their needs are. They do have youth counselors in all the schools and things like that. So that's the direction that they were looking at. But again, it's going to come down to creating that position that's going to work for Beaumont.
Follow up? Not right now. You want to think about it for a bit?
My concern is just that this didn't come from the school board as a request first. It came from council as probably councilors hearing that there were concerns in the school and that this might address those concerns. But we don't really, I'd like to make it based on some factual data if there was some, but at this point we're preventing something, but we don't really have data to support what it is we're trying to fix. So what I heard you say, we don't want bad things to happen. We definitely want to have a safe school, but this is not going to be every school. This is going to be in one school. This person is going to be in one school.
Well, I think that's through Your Worship. The school we're choosing is the junior high school. It would also service the high school as well, but the main body office would be at the junior high school, is what we're looking at right now. And because all the other schools, they do have access to counseling services, etc. And we just have those relationships that we would build between all the different parties through the RCMP, through the youth center, through the community, through the community supports, through Alberta Health, etc. This is going to be a key position for that.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm My first instinct was that option one would be my preferred solution, or if this is a solution. But for all the reasons that have already been discussed, I'm concerned that we can't actually provide the officer in a timely manner. Can I just ask, especially if we've got Staff Sergeant Egan present, what's the difference between the number of RCMP officers we have versus the number that have been requested?
Shields?
Yep. Thank you, Worship. We've requested one additional. We have 13 officers in Beaumont. We requested one additional officer for the 2019 budget year, and whichever decision that you make tonight, it could be an additional to that. So right now we'd be looking at 14 members in the future.
But there has been a deficit, if I can call it that, in the number of officers we have historically, hasn't there? Or am I misinformed?
Well, if you look through council, if we look at the decision making matrix, it's looking at the crime severity index, it's looking at our populations, it's looking at a number of factors of what are the incidents that they're dealing with, when are those crimes, etc., or issues taking place. So we have 13 officers. Yes, it can get tight. We do have a few officers that are always in transition here. They're on leaves. They're they're transferring, etc. So when we get up to 14, 15, we're probably going to be okay for our community, given our low crime severity index. But if you went purely by population, we should have 18.
Okay, thank you. I guess I should rephrase the question a little bit there, which would then come to historically, how long has it been between us asking for an extra RCMP officer and that officer actually being available for duty? I know that's a statistical question.
It is hard to say, but recently with our new recruits and stuff like that is up to a year. We put the request in after budget approval. We have to actually put the request in the summer before budget approval. Once budget is approved, another letter goes to them saying it has budget approval. Then they go through their recruitment process, and it goes on their list and stuff. Beaumont is considered a priority because we have had a number of positions that are in transition, but still it comes, as I said, it could be 6 months, it could be 12 months.
So in between, thank you. So in between us making this decision, if the decision is that we want an RCMP officer, it would be at least 6 months and perhaps 12 months or longer.
Yeah, and probably the same amount to get a peace officer as well. So if you're worried about timeline, I think we're looking at the same timeline, unless I heard that wrong, Mr. Hills.
Through your worship, I think with the peace officer option, we can provide a peace officer quicker. Probably, if council made a decision and we started the recruitment process, we'd have someone here in June or July. However, it would be a number of months they would be before they're fully functional with the training that they may require.
Okay. Follow up?
No, I think that answers my question.
All right, Councillor Moncalf-Swain, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll try and be brief based on the feedback and cutting out. So, based on the comments from Councillor Van Newkirk and the conversation about the importance of control to hire as opposed to being provided one out of Ottawa, I support the motion on floor option 2. I have faith in our administration that will provide the necessary training to this resource, and I can also see us leading this trend potentially down the road here in Alberta. So I definitely support this motion.
Okay. You're still in support of the motion on the floor, right?
Correct. Sorry, I know I cut out at the end.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. I think Councillor Barnhart asked a good question, and it's one of the questions that I ask a lot is, are we solving the right problem? When we're looking to solve things in business and troubleshooting things, are we solving the right problem? I was thinking about that after she said that, and one of the things that I want to reflect back to is high school reunion I had this summer. quantifying some of the gray hairs I'm getting. But one of the things that I learned from a fellow classmate from high school who's now a teacher there, when I saw the very visible corner office that said school resource officer on it, is the comments that were made around the ability of the individual to connect with the students, to be active with the students, and to really relate and head off problems before they become problems. That was what I heard loud and clear from her and her coworker when we did that tour that day, is that in the school, having a presence reduced the amount of problems per se. Was the officer there able to react to bigger issues that come up? For sure they did, and they were able to do that. But my hope would be an individual that would be able to connect with and work with the students and administration and head off some of the problems, or head off some of the things before they come problems. So anyways, independent of option 1, 2, and 3, those are my thoughts. Given making a decision tonight, I would still support the motion on the floor of option 2.
Okay. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I forgot to mention earlier, Mr. Hill's great report. You did a nice job of laying out the pros and cons of all 3 options. In response to Councillor Barnhart's concern, and I do appreciate your raising it, is under option 3, the report from Mr. Hiltz does say they would promote youth engagement in a community where stakeholders act as a liaison between schools, the RCMP, city services probation, other service providers to ensure youth are able to access supports. That really speaks to me to being either the peace officer or the youth worker itself. And going back to our budget process in the fall, when this idea of having a school resource officer came up in our budget deliberations, I believe my recollection was that we were of the opinion in the 2019 budget allocating money for a school resource officer that they would be accountable to Beaumont. And that told me, I was thinking back then in the budget process of a peace officer or a youth worker possibly, because they would be accountable to council, and if the program does not go to our council's satisfaction, we have more control over ending it if it came down to that down in the future. I'm not sure an RCMP officer would have be as accountable to Beaumont, and I mean that respectfully, of course, too. It gives us more control, and that was my interpretation of our budget deliberations with this line item going forward for 2019. So enough said. I do support the budget, the motion forward for peace officer. Thank you very much.
Okay, I got a couple comments I want to weigh in. I got to admit, going back to budget, my objections at budget were not that we couldn't get, were not that we'd be more accountable. I'm actually really more in favor of having an RCMP officer do that. They can handle a scope of issues that a peace officer just can't, based on the powers that are delegated to them. My objection at budget time is we had only requested one officer, and I agree with you. I think that should be a general duty officer this time around. But if we have the option and we can get an RCMP officer fairly fast, and we can get the right officer, I personally rather see and go with that, and keep the peace officer in our back pocket. Because as Mr. Hill said, we can probably get one within 3 to 4 months, and then 3 to 4 months to train him. So I'd actually support any option of seeing what the RCMP could do for us in a timeline, and getting an RCMP officer in to do it, because they can deal with so much more. Things like domestic abuse and things like that, they can actually open up files and start that process, whereas peace officers, and you can correct me if I'm going down the rabbit hole and I'm wrong, but I don't think they have the ability to do that, so they would have to resource the RCMP anyway. So that's sort of where my head's at. I think we're better off if we can get the RCMP officer than going with a peace officer in this particular instance. And maybe the second person in is a peace officer that can work with the RCMP, but that's where I'm at. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate the thought process, because it really is the pros and cons that we're wrestling with. What if I understand? I just want to summarize what I'm hearing, that the timelines for the two are the same. Is that correct?
Mr. Hilt?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I think the timelines for hiring are the peace officer is a faster timeline, but what I'm saying is that getting them trained takes additional time. Like they're going to come with their background, what they have for being a peace officer, or we can actually appoint someone who has more youth training or education or one of those things. They would just need to be trained on a lot of those other items that are basically accountable for the position of being a peace officer or a peace officer with that youth center background. So it kind of depends. But, so
Right.
the additional training, you're going to have an add-on.
Right, and it's hard to know what the timeline is going to be with the RCMP to know if it's going to be 2 years, then we cooked our goose there. Then what are we going to do? We're going to start all over again. So this is where I'm thinking if the SRO could be hired from within Beaumont, it might be a little bit faster, but
it would be faster to hire from a peace officer or youth worker perspective.
If I could just add on to that, my second question, if we're looking at the pros and cons, is $65,000 a year difference. Is that roughly?
Approximately, yes.
And do we share the cost of the RCMP officer, or is it 100% ours?
It would be 100%. That would be a 90-10 split. Yes.
Yeah, it's the 90-10 is what I was thinking. So it's not, is that 175 already taking into account the 90-10?
Correct.
It is. Okay. So, I mean, I'm hearing that the officers, the uniform is part of what we need and the connection. That's why I was in favor of the youth worker at budget time, but now I'm hearing that there's more of a concern from the schools and others to have the presence of an officer who can take action and enforcement if needed and be connected to the RCMP, and I'm not sure the SRO, and maybe it's a question for Staff Sergeant Egan, is can the second option, can that person, do they have powers that will be adequate enough to deal with the issues that we're dealing with in schools?
Through your worship and members of council, through the Peace Officer Act and everything, is they can take it pretty much as far as it getting into a criminal activity. Like they can't do anything that's listed under the criminal code.
Right.
So
but they
let's
have
say
the
if there
liaison.
was, so if there was, let's say, a criminal activity through the school and there was weapons or something, they would have to bring in the RCMP. Certain drugs, they'd probably have to bring in the RCMP. They can deal with it up to that point, but they'd have to bring in the RCMP at that point of time.
Okay.
And that's on the purely in the enforcement side. All three options have, I think you wouldn't go wrong with any of them at the end of the day. It's just, it depends on, which position I think would work best for Beaumont. The RCMPs probably has the best program moving forward. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years. The youth worker, as I said, it would probably take a bit of a different slant. Working with the youth center, etc. The peace officer program, there's a lot of potential there if you get the right person and pointed to that.
Yeah. And I just would support option 2 given the timeline. So at this point, from what I've gathered.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Just based on the timeline administration Mr. Hiltz had suggested, a person could be optimistic that we would go through a hiring process, train, and perhaps have someone in place for beginning of the next school year. That could be a thing that could happen based upon timelines I'm hearing on that, and that would be positive. Second piece is I guess, comment to the mayor. I hear what you're saying around the ability and scope of the officer being more broad and can solve those problems. But if we look at where we're at today, any of those bigger problems that are identified in the school, they go to the RCMP right now anyways. And when the school resource officer came up and I voted for yes to be approving for funding that in the budget, I guess what I was thinking more of was, or less of, was putting an officer in the school to police the school. I was thinking of a uniformed individual, authoritative individual in the school to engage with the school. So when I look at it through that lens of enforce versus engage, why option 1 was my first inkling too, but when I looked through it, the lens of enforce versus engage pulled out, and that's where option 2 came for me. So just to further my thoughts, I guess, on that. So that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Based on what I've heard so far, I'm inclined to request an RCMP officer, option 1, as discussed. And if the RCMP can't supply us with one within a reasonable time frame, let's say 12 months, to then withdraw that request and do it ourselves through a police officer, would be my suggestion at this point.
I agree with you. I'm with you. Further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll call the vote. And the motion is to...
Shall I repeat it for you?
Yeah, please. Yeah, for everybody.
Everybody? Okay, thank you. Just give me 1 second. Scroll back to the page. Motion is that council not approve and direct administration to move forward with a peace officer position.
Fair enough.
School's work position.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Councillor Munkoff-Swain?
In favor.
That carries 5-2. All right. Item 8C, Black Gold Regional School Division, request number 18 for funding. Mr. Hiltz. Or do we want to take 5? Taking 5 after this, but I want to get through this one.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. On Tuesday, January 15th, Black Gold reached out to administration to ascertain if the city would be interested in partnering in funding a second gymnasium expansion at the high school, a modernization expansion project. The partnership would include funding up to $680,000, so it could be up to that amount to increase the size of the additional gymnasium to meet the school's needs. Alberta Infrastructure, through their educational funds, has informed Black Gold that there is no additional monies for the expansion. If they would like a larger gymnasium, they'd be required to pay for it within their own resources or through partnership dollars. For points for consideration for council members is the Beaumont Sport and Rec Center includes a gymnasium and field house for community and user group play. Community need, so that the city itself would not have a large need moving forward with the second gymnasium. However, there may be some community groups out there that could ascertain some additional time. So and then provincial, like one of the biggest things for me, this is not in the report, but one of the biggest issues for me is provincial downloading of responsibilities. This is something that should be paid for by Alberta Infrastructure and through the educational funds. And the budget timing, we've just gone through a budget process, so this would mean going through a process of reapproving the budget and allocating dollars there. If council considers the Black Gold request, administration recommends a partnership agreement be drawn up that would guarantee the city primetime usage for community organization. The usage would be determined on a sliding scale based on the amount of funding provided. So given all of this, administration recommends council not approve the funding request by Black Gold Regional School District. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Van Newkirk.
I would move the recommendation that council not fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? This is going to go quick. Councillor Munkoff-Swain. Do we lose you? Councillor Munkoff-Swain? All right, Councillor Barnhart, maybe we'll come back.
Right, and thank you, Your Worship. I would just want to comment, or maybe I'll ask the question to the administration. When we designed and went ahead with the construction of the expansion, if I'm not mistaken, our consultation and our gathering of information would have included talking to our partners, including the Black Gold School Division. So I'm just a little frustrated that this is coming at this stage when, we've we've chosen to add the gymnasium space because there haven't been enough gym spaces. I don't ever recall this being raised as another option. So the timing of that, and just maybe you could help me out understand what changed for the school board, or is this what you're talking about with the provincial funding perhaps not being available? What is the...
There's a phone somewhere. I'm sorry.
Mr. Hiltz?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay. Your worship and through members of council, I think they were surprised. What had happened is the school was designed with a 400 square meter gymnasium. That is actually an elementary school gymnasium size. And when that was brought up to Alberta infrastructure, that the gymnasium was too small for a high school, that they require a minimum of 600 meters squared to 800 meters squared. They were told that there's no additional funding. If you would like the bigger one, you're going to be responsible to pay for it. This has all happened very quickly. I think the school was intended that they were going to get the larger gymnasium. So it was just like, to them, it was like bang as well.
And I guess further, if I may, the need for another high school, I'm hoping that's still on the list, and that would be rectified when that does occur.
Yes. Yeah. Both school boards will be coming forward with high schools in the future.
Well, I'm just not at this point in favor of funding it, given the timing in our budget.
Okay, I'm just trying to see.
Sorry, I can hear you now.
Okay. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, and really appreciate Councillor Barnhart's comments about, additional high schools coming on board. Quick question for Mr. Hiltz. Regarding MSI, we'd allocated kind of 50% of it to the new Beaumont Sports Rec Centre. Where are we at with that now?
Mr. Hiltz?
Through your worship and through to Councillor Munkoff-Swain, are you asking where we're at in terms of the allocation of MSI funding towards the Beaumont Sport and Rec Centre?
No, sorry, again, it cut out. We'll give up if this doesn't work. Essentially, we've got 50% left.
Yes.
Where are we at with that? Does that run out into 2019? Could this be something we could use for that?
I think that I'm going to defer that answer to Mr. Harris to provide that. I think when we looked at this option, we were looking at the mill rate stabilization, if council was to look at that. MSI, as my understanding, has been allocated over the next couple of years, but I'll let Alan give the proper answer.
Worship to council and the public. This is where I have to remember not to go right over top of it. My apologies. Right now, with regards to the 50%, there's 50%, but that's also relates to street improvements has been allocated to the funding of the Beaumont Sports and Recreation Center in regards to the approval of federal tax funds for the payment towards the principal and interest hasn't been. The remaining MSI can be used directly against that should the province or government not approve the funding using gas tax. So now I would say that the best source of funding would be through stabilization fund, as Mr. Hiltz has indicated.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other comments, I just got a couple comments. I really agree with a provincial responsibility being downloaded onto our municipality, and that seems to be coming more and more often. I also have issues, the school board, lots of anecdotal evidence around that user groups have trouble getting in, principals won't let my group. And so honestly, if they're looking for support from our community, they got to do a policy together of allowing our community into their schools after hours. And until they wanted to look at something like that, I'm not really in favor of yeah, so we'll go from there. Councillor Danlock, last thought.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick thought on this too is that you may recall back during the deliberations on the Recreation Association, I asked the question, do we really need a gym to be added here? And Mr. to take away the gym from the structure, only say about $1 million. It's basically just a small shell. And our debate animated in the sense that we all agreed that community groups needed another gym because the schools were providing. So we've taken the leadership role and adding a gym to our new facility. And so we've done our share of their stock and do their share. So I'm not for this motion in any way or form. Thank you.
So the motion before us is to not approve funding.
No money for that.
Seeing no further comments. All in favor? Councillor Montgomery.
In favor.
Thank you. Funding is not. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Chris is not in the room. All right, so we'll come back to bylaw 937-19 smoke. Are you ready? Yeah. Awesome. Back to item 8D. Approval.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before finance 1901 elected officials remuneration. Finance 2 elected officials remuneration. Committee members for duty official and one change, and that was on page 3, section 8, effective date, effective to January 2019.
Thank you very much. Remember, Council before to move them. Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
We've had extensive discussions. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you. Just want to won't reiterate everything. Committee of the whole meeting, but kind of close. Committee of the whole meeting, January 15th, I asked my moving compensation to 32, and that was the amount consistent with councillors remaining whole from 2018 to 2020. At that meeting, there wasn't support for that request. I want to acknowledge that council had significant discussions during the budget and engagement opportunities following the budget workshop. Reflecting by myself away from distractions over the holiday break, I look in the past where strong policy and procedure guided the program. I think that's where we needed to be with the councillor remuneration process. Following, in this instance, as a council, we will. In closing, although I'm not supportive of the process that brought us to the current council remuneration after some period of reflection, I suggest the council remain whole rather than looking at an increase at this time. I am glad that we are moving forward with the addition that Councillor Montgomery proposed in this policy of review. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, I'll be brief here on this. I think my comments have been heard on it. I obviously don't support everything in it, but as a whole, I do support the policy. So I will be voting in favour of this policy.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us back to bylaw 9A, bylaw 937-19, smoke-free public places for first reading. Chief Cook and Sergeant Spring.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here with you before you this evening. Your Worship, last fall in September, we were instructed, our administration was instructed by council to come back to council with an updated smoking bylaw for the city of Beaumont. It was at that time when we were instructed that we were finalizing our cannabis consumption bylaw for the city. At that time, Council also directed administration to align the smoke-free public places bylaw as closely as possible with their cannabis consumption bylaw. Today, the province of Alberta has the Tobacco and Smoking Reduction Act in place to address the smoking of tobacco within the province should a municipality not have a bylaw in place. However, currently, the City of Beaumont has bylaw number 59303, the Smoke-Free Public Places bylaw, in place, which is very closely aligned with the provincial act. In front of you, bylaw number 937-19 brings smoking tobacco closely, or aligns smoking tobacco closely with that of cannabis. Not only does it prohibit smoking tobacco within all buildings in Beaumont, it also includes now on the grounds of outdoor public events, in campgrounds, on patios, inside public vehicles, playgrounds, open spaces, parks, seasonal skating rinks, sports field, and as we heard council request, within or on any trail located within the city. We are seeking Council's recommendation that Council give first reading to bylaw 937-19, smoke-free public places, and further to that, we're looking for direction from Council on engaging the public prior to bringing this bylaw back for second and third readings. I'd like to take any questions should we get.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Clarifying questions for administration? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through Your Worship to the presenters. What was my first question? How restrictive is this? Do we know how restrictive this approach is compared with nearby municipalities?
With other municipalities within the province?
Yes, within the province.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Stout, we did engage other municipalities reviewing bylaws, St. Albert being one, for example, and in many cases aligned this bylaw with what is currently in place. I unfortunately do not have a chart or any graphs that I can present to show anything further beyond that at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming that we're aligning tobacco and cannabis consumption in public so this effectively replaces both the cannabis bylaw and the older smoking bylaw.
Through Your Worship, Councillor Stout, no, sir, it does not. This year would go hand in hand, where this bylaw would address 93719 would address specifically the smoking of tobacco, where cannabis consumption bylaw would address the consumption of cannabis and potentially edibles in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
I might be going to ask the question I think you were maybe getting at. Thank you, Your Worship. Under the smoking bylaw, if I understand correctly, events such as the Blues and Roots Festival can apply for a permitted area for smoking of tobacco.
Yes, they may.
But I'm pretty sure under the cannabis consumption bylaw, they can't get a place where there can be cannabis smoked outside. That's correct.
No, I believe we had it in the cannabis consumption bylaw where they could have smoke areas. I can confirm that for you in just one moment.
Because I think that was one of the concerns that was raised at that time, and we went with a total ban, because I remember and I were kind of talking about maybe there could be areas set aside, but I'm trying to have that. And I went back and looked, and I thought it said no public smoking of cannabis, only in your residence.
Through Your Worship to Councillor, I believe you are correct. Yes, my apologies for that.
So that was important for us to make sure people are aware of the distinction between those two. Thank you.
Further questions? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of first reading? Goswain? In favor, that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council prepared to move council direct administration to consult the proposed bylaw 937-119, smoke-free public places? Report at a future meeting prior to second and third reading. Councillor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
On the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you. Just looking for a little bit of clarification. the consultation what might that look like for this? I'm assuming similar to and would have some lead sessions and stuff. Just what might that look like, that engagement piece?
Councillor Van Newkirk, very similar to what we did with the cannabis consumption bylaw. Not only would we advertise in, also through our outlets as well. In the public engagement portion, the intent would be to event or a community to, like we did again with cannabis, have signage up and allow the public to engage on the proposed and to ask those questions, gather that information, of course, bring that back to council.
Good. Yeah.
For the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Councillor Monkoff-Swain?
In favor?
That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9B, bylaw 939-19. Committee, second and third reading. Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reading of bylaw 939-19 on January 2019, administration is recommending first that council give second, and then second that council give third and final bylaw 939-19 grant funding advisory committee bylaw.
To provide a staffing update as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. On January 7th, Miranda Anderson joined the Legislative Services Department as our Administrative Assistant. Miranda spent 2 years as the Leduc County Enforcement Services Administrative Assistant and gained other transferable skills in the areas of inclusive post-secondary education as well as workplace inclusion advocacy with nonprofit organization. She has a BA in English and operates a freelance writing business in addition to her work with us. You'll be seeing more of Miranda in the upcoming months. Over the next few months, she'll be transitioning into the Committee of the Whole and Council meetings. At this time, I want to thank Shaima Naradin for all of her hard work and dedication to council meetings in the Committee of the Whole. Shaima will still be working with council, but will be stepping out of the Committee of the Whole and Council meetings altogether.
Thank you very much. I apologize. I do notice that I skipped right over councillor inquiries and reports. So we're going to go back up the agenda. We've got 3 written reports. I do have 1 verbal report. Councillor Monkoff-Swain and I attended the inaugural Transit Committee meeting last week. It went fairly well. Unfortunately, Beaumont sort of stepped in it a little bit. We identified a problem with the MOU, and so the MOU has gone back for some amendments and will be coming back to council for reapproval so that the terms of reference that we approved meet the intent of the MOU as we all signed it. Honestly, it was great. There were some hard discussions, and it's going to be a great group moving forward. And looking really forward to seeing how we can develop regional transit with our partners in the region. If anyone has any questions or comments, I can forward you the terms of reference in the minutes, and we can go from there. But all right, are there any further statements before we get into inquiries? No. All right, councillor inquiries. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, we just had a couple of inquiries here, and I did give administration some heads up here so they could prepare a bit for it. The first is just on the garbage and recycling program. Looking for a little bit of a big picture update. There's been a couple of news articles circulating, maybe one from the CBC and some others, just highlighting the fact that China isn't accepting what they used to. We're about a year into that notification around that, and just looking for some comment around how our service provider has been affected by these decisions and how it may be affecting Beaumont. The article does speak to a common contractor affecting other municipalities, but just looking to see how this decision affects Beaumont directly and what our contractor has to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Our service provider is Campac Environmental. They own their own material recovery facility in Blackfields. So at this time, there are no impacts to the recycling program in terms of the commingling recycling. We've also been in talks with them if there are going to be changes in the future to let us know. But it only appears right now that the Green for Life is having the impacts. They're outsourcing theirs through the Asian market, and so any community that's dealing with them right now are in that situation. So we're good. We're good at this moment in time with our recycling program.
What was that question? Yeah, one of the boards I sit on is the Edmonton Region Waste Advisory Committee, and the conversation came up there, and there was some talk around the table that some of the contractors had talked about increasing costs and such, and that's why I wanted to bring this up, just to determine that we hadn't heard any rumblings of the increased costs. So thank you for the answer on that. Second inquiry. Second one is around photo radar. We had a conversation around that in November, and I just wanted to kind of get an update on a few things. Being the timing of the current contract, when the tender process is going to go out, and just an update on the installation of the data collection devices that we were presented with. Please, thank you.
So, thank you, Your Worship, members of council, is that our current global contract for photo radar expires on June 30th of 2019. We'll be coming forward with a report to council the last meeting of February. I believe that's February 26th. It will outline some contract considerations moving forward. It'll also include the data that we are working with Global on in terms of what we've collected from the boxes. And in terms of the RFP moving forward, we're looking at having that go out March, April for the June 30th expiry.
And have some of the data collection devices been installed in Beaumont now?
Yes, they have, and they have collected the data. They have been removed. To date, I haven't seen the data, but it is going to be ready for the 26th of February.
Thank you for
Thank you, Your Worship. And to you, Mr. Hiltz, I have two questions, which I apologize for not giving you heads up, but I fully prepared to wait for the answers. I don't need to have the answers right away, but you may have them in your head. One is about traffic concern, one in particular around Shoppers Drug Mart coming south. There's a right turn only at that particular intersection right there, and it's been brought to my attention that that's causing some difficulties. People are proceeding through straight ahead to go to the Tim Hortons, probably. And just wondered if you could perhaps just see if that is causing any other difficulties. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. Your Worship, members of council, that is actually a identified RCMP hotspot. So they actually do.
So there's reason for that?
They do enforce that area. They do patrol that area quite a bit for that. People still do it, but however, that is a high priority.
I guess the question, the way it was asked to me was, if people are not following that sign, is there a reason for that sign? Is that sign because it's? I think I can see why it's a hotspot. People are wanting to get somewhere, and they're in that lane, and they have to come into another lane in order to get past it.
Yeah.
So I raised that for you to perhaps put in the back of your mind. Yeah. Not a big issue, but certainly one that a citizen raised, and it might have some real benefits. The other one is about the environmental master plan. So following up on some of the concerns raised around where we're going with that, is that due back to us sometime soon? Because I know it's on our list of plans.
Yeah, through Your Worship, members of council, as that was a budget request for 2019 that was approved. I'm going to ask colleagues here if they've worked on the project charter or not, and where that's at.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Barnhart. Work has begun on the charter for the environmental master plan and scoping out what is and isn't within the scope of that document as the update progresses, and you can expect to start to see more of that as that work progresses, but it's early stages yet.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions I'd like to ask. First one, could administration provide us with a update on the closure of the aquafit pool on January the 14th and subsequent reopening? And could you also confirm that the equipment that failed there is due to be replaced as part of the aquafit upgrade? Or I should now say BSRC.
Okay. Thank you, worship members of council. The air handling mechanism that shut down the pool, it was closed down for approximately an hour on the 14th. And that was the result of the sudden temperature drop of the gas tie-in that occurred earlier and the system not being able to handle the airflow. The louvers weren't operating correctly at that moment in time. So staff attempted to restart the system and failed twice. Clark Buildings were on site with the construction and were able to get the system running. The result was the pool being shut down, as I said, for approximately an hour. Gateway Mechanical were brought in to service the unit and readjust the louvers to get proper airflow. The system is being replaced as part of the expansion and modernization, and these type of mechanical issues do happen from time to time, and staff reacted properly to the closure, and once the system was working, it cleared up the air quality, and we were open within that hour.
Thank you. I'm really gratified that we could recover that so quickly. I think that's really good news, and congratulations to everybody concerned. Second question was, could you provide us with transit statistics for
Just going to bring it up here.
2018?
So we're showing you basically just over about a year and a half of stats. So as you can see that we have had some great improvement in the second part of 2018 from September, October, November. Our summers are usually down. The students aren't riding the transit at that time. December is also down due to exams and different school schedules and things like that. But we are seeing that there's a bit of an uptick given over. And so basically over the next year, we'll be in a place to really determine our transit numbers given at that 2-year window.
Thank you. Could I get an electronic copy of that?
I'll send those out to all council members tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, some kudos first and a quick question. I've had a number of citizens suggest to me that this most recent round of snow grading in the city has been exceptionally well done. People are saying it's the best they recall in recent memory for getting snow cleared quickly, and the cul-de-sacs and the secondary roads being cleared very quickly. So, Mr. Hills, please pass on kudos to the appropriate department people who've done an exceptionally good job this year to date with the snow removal and grading of the roads in general. My question is actually around the up project on the recreation center. We are 3 months into the 22-month build process. Can you let us know if we are on track at this point? What needs to be done? It has been getting done. Are we on track to be finished at this point? Sorry, we are on track at our 3-month point where we need to be with construction, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. We are probably slightly ahead, and we should be probably starting to see some of the steel coming in February, March, and we had the update, the 3-month window in December, and we'll be probably coming back in March, April.
Thank you. One more question, please. Not a question, more of a comment regarding FCM in Quebec City. I believe registration opens tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
We will? Okay, yeah, because I know, we left it too late last year. Hotel was too far away, and
no, we're going to decide that tonight.
Cabbing was excessive and inconvenient. Thank you.
We'll get through this first. Councillor Hendricks.
Just a question on where the discussions are with St. Andre Danzero crosswalk upgrade.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. There's a meeting next week with administration and the school board and staff, and we will be working through that issue at that meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions. Mr. Hills did bring up one thing. FCM is coming, and we should decide on who's going to go. Last year, we made the decision as a council that we weren't going to send the whole of council to the FCM every year. And so last year, I believe Councillors Barnhart, Stout, and Danlock went. And so this year, I'd like to open it up to saying we should send 3 or perhaps 4 so every councillor can go twice in the term. But I'd like to open it up to Councillors Van Newkirk, Munkoff, Swain, myself, and Councillor Hendricks to see if they want to go. And then if we can't fill the 3, we'd open it up. Does that seem fair for council? Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, thank you. Just due to timing constraints, I have a family wedding to attend at the same time, so I have a conflict and wouldn't be able to attend FCM. So, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Danlock?
Thank you, Worship. Just a suggestion. Rotating is totally fine with me. I had the privilege of going last year, and it was a great experience. If councillors can't go, I would go again this year, but depending upon their having first crack at the cat, I would request that administration book 4 rooms tomorrow, only because we left it a bit late last year through no fault of anybody at all, just got booked late. Our hotel was okay, but it was about a $15 cab ride back and forth, and yet go there twice a day, and it been inconvenient. It was also excessively expensive for cabs, more than we probably anticipated. I suggest booking 4 rooms, and if we have to cancel one of them, that's okay. At least we get a much closer venue would be beneficial to those who attend. Thank you.
Comment from Ms. Minder?
Thank you, Worship. Just my comments to Councillor Daniluk with regards to hotels. This is a conference that's really highly attended, and the day that those hotels had actually opened up, we were on the phones for over an hour and a half trying to secure bookings, and we were still unable to secure bookings. So that's kind of what happens where the hotels have already opened up, and we've already been calling trying to secure bookings, and in those cases we also put names on wait lists for other municipalities that drop out as well. So we make every attempt we possibly can to secure those hotel bookings within the conference area.
Thank you. I was misinformed as of last year's procedure, so I apologize for any misinterpretation on my part.
Yeah. No worries. Councillor Hendricks, any interest in going?
Setting coordinates. Then I'll
let us know.
an answer in the morning.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Munkoff, Swain.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd like to go, and I'd also recommend considering administration look up Airbnb as an option. I know there are some good apartments, good quality options really close to the conference there, so take a look at that as opposed to just relying on hotels.
Okay. So far, myself, Councillor Munkoff, Swain, and Councillor Hendricks is going to let us know. Do we want to send the 4th or just send 3? Bearing in mind. Councillor Barnhart.
If there was room, I would love to go, but I do have another option with the housing conference coming up, and hoping that council would support my attending that instead of FCM. So I'm thinking 1 conference a year is probably plenty to take, and I'd love to go to FCM if there was, money galore, but there isn't. So
okay.
That's fine.
All right, so let's keep it. Let's keep it to the 3, and Councillor Van Newkirk's already opted out. If Councillor Hendricks opts out, we'll open it up to the 3 councillors that went last year. Fair enough? Yep. All right. There are no correspondence items. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Can I get a motion to go in camera pursuant to Section 25(1) of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act due to some contractual negotiations? Councillor Danlock.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.